Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to an online debate, Women in the Agri-Food Industry and how cross-gender collaboration impacts a successful transformation of the sector. This event is organised by EIT Food with Euractiv as your media partner. Now, first things first, as always, we want you to get involved, to send in your comments or your questions into our Slido chat page. If you're watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, scan this QR code that you are seeing on your screens, and also there is a hashtag 08March for you to use on Slido. Okay, so today is of course March 8th and it is International Women's Day. So wishing every woman out there a happy International Women's Day. It is of course a day for celebration for all of us, but importantly it is also a call for action. Now this year the theme is about embracing equity. Equity goes beyond the simple notion of equality. It's about embracing an inclusive world. Women don't just want to contribute to this world, they want to be change makers. Now, according to McKinsey, corporations identified as more diverse and inclusive are 35% more likely to outperform their competitors. Imagine that. Harvard Business Review says diverse companies are 70% more likely to capture new markets, and having diverse teams can lead to greater revenues. But only 6.6% of all Fortune 500 companies have women as their CEOs. Women remain underrepresented in both deep tech startups and in investment funds. Now, the agri-food sector that we are, of course, discussing today is crying out for innovation and diverse leadership as it moves towards sustainability. The adoption of agriculture technology or ag-tech solutions is also slow in the uptake. Fostering gender inclusion could also help bridge that gap, as well as having a positive impact on things such as food security, nutrition, livelihoods, and of course sustainability. But the OECD says there is next to no data on the contribution that women play in this sector as entrepreneurs, as workers, as consumers across food systems. And without that data, we aren't aware of their experiences. What we do know, currently less than 30% of EU farms are operated by women, and only 35% of agricultural workforces are women. They also have unequal access to land, to education, entrepreneurial and digital skills, and a professional network. But gender isn't the only barrier. Many women also face bias because of their race, their sexual orientation, or perhaps they have a disability, all of which results in even more microaggressions and barriers to their advancement. So what could create an impactful change for this sector, and one that really helps women to be seen and heard? What allyship and cross-gender collaboration could men provide to, of course, help bridge this gap and the gender disparity gap? Well, with all of that, let's ask our panelists. Okay, so sticking with the theme of equity and equality, we also have two men joining us. Thank you so much. Just shows again that, us women, we do things differently and also fair. Okay, so joining me for this debate, we have Maria-Lisa Marisa. She's the director of EIT Food Co-location Centre covering North East Europe. Welcome. We also have Maura Westman. She's a gender specialist with Investment Bank, the EIB. Welcome. We also have Miro Hegovic. He's the founding board member at the Lean Startup Croatia. We have Giedre Kesunete. I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your surname. She's from Empowering Women in Agri-Food, participant from 2021 and the founder of a food startup that develops meat alternatives. Welcome to you as well. Last but not least, we have Mart van der Kamp. He's a director of education at EIT Food. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have all of you with us on this special day for women. Happy International Women's Day to all of you and to our two male allies. Okay, so I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves. So Maria, over to you first.
I hope you can hear me. This is a little bit disturbing.
Yes, we can.
Because we are kind of like in a box. Anyway, very nice to be here today, and from my part as well, really excellent International Women's Day. We kind of see that this work is probably something that we definitely need to go on and on and on. I think it is going to be a never-ending story. Luckily so, because it means that we will have a possibility to strengthen, these bonds between from kind of a female perspective to men perspective, and indeed within EIT Food as well, we obviously see that inclusive food system is actually extremely important, and we certainly cannot do that without taking into account female approach, but equally obviously our kind of counterparts of men. So this is really, for me, it's a dialogue, and it's never-ending dialogue, and this is what we try to do within EIT Food as well. And you mentioned earlier about those TechCrunch numbers as well, and when we see that wherever the numbers are sometimes really low, like for example, there's only 28% of women founders, I think we have to do something about it. And this is indeed one of my roles as well within EIT Food, while we are promoting agri-food areas that, focus on this one specifically.
Thank you so much. Okay, over to Moa.
Thank you so much. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes.
So my name. Great, fantastic. So yeah, happy International Women's Day to all. I'm Moa Westman. I work as a gender specialist at the European Investment Bank. For those of you who don't know the bank, the European Investment Bank is the lending arm of the European Union. We are the biggest multilateral financial institution in the world, and one of the largest provider of climate finance in Europe and worldwide. We, of course, believe in gender equality as a fundamental right for all women and girls, men and boys, but also really as a way to improve business performance, financial returns on our investments, and to advance progress on a whole range of social, environmental, climate, and economic goals and outcomes. So this is really at the core of our business. We know, of course, that investments in green growth and sustainable agriculture are more needed than ever, that climate change, but also political instability is really challenging the sector, agriculture productivity, and the resilience of farmers and agribusinesses worldwide. Faced with these challenges, I mean, it's really more important than ever to build inclusive and sustainable and resilient agri-food systems so that the agriculture sector can perform to its full capacity and become more efficient. And from what I see, tackling gender gaps around productivity and access to finances, but also other type of resources in the sector is really a critical part of that. And as we have heard, I mean, women already play a really important and crucial role in the sector, making up not only a large part of the agriculture workforce, but also producing tons of food and running agribusinesses, both in Europe, but also elsewhere. Women are underfunded. They receive only about 7% of total agriculture investments worldwide, and the European Institute for Gender Equality points out that women in the EU have been disproportionately underrepresented as beneficiaries of different EU payment schemes in the sector. So, of course, as a bank, we are convinced that women will be instrumental in moving the agri sector forward. but also that it is important for agribusinesses more broadly to enhance the diversity of leadership teams and workforces, and also look at the services and products that businesses in the sector are producing also through a gender lens, and linking back to some of the data points that Miriam quoted in her initial opening, why that's really so important. So therefore, through the investments that we do at the European Investment Bank, we aim to, through our partnerships with local banks, funds, and also microfinance institutions, look to finance women entrepreneurs in the sector, but also promote diversity and help our companies and public sector clients to apply a gender lens in our broader agriculture-related investments as well. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion on these topics later today with the panelists and the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we will definitely be discussing the gender lens investments with you a bit later on. Over to Miro.
Thank you, Mariam. First of all, happy International Women's Day to all women listening. Last year in Croatia, Lean Startup Croatia was an organization that was leading empowering women in agri-food program. This program is supported by EIT Food, and we were organizing it locally. That gave us opportunity to support 10 very motivated and very ambitious, I would say, young women entrepreneurs who are developing their ideas in different parts of Croatia. Throughout this program, we were able to support women entrepreneurs through mentoring, through education, and in the end, some of them got very valuable money prizes. When we were doing this program, we also involved quite a big community of women entrepreneurs that are innovating in agri-food, and then we encounter some of the, I would say, issues that those women are facing as entrepreneurs. That's why I'm very happy to be here today and discuss all those issues, all those problems that all these women entrepreneurs are encountering here in Croatia.
Thank you so much, and we're happy to have you. Giedre, over to you next.
Thank you for having me at this event. I want to congratulate all participants on March 8th. I'm grateful for this discussion where we can talk about equality and equity for men and women, as this is common concern in our society. Although in Europe it seems that all genders have equal rights to learn, work, or choose their lifestyle, but still we see gaps in salaries and some stereotypes what is better for boys or girls. And these are just a few topics that are worth discussing and improving. I am founder of food tech startup Milgogi, which I created after participation in EIT food program EVA, which stands for Empowering Women in Agri-Food. And during this program, I have seen a real example of equity in action. Therefore, I believe that it's a great need to specialize in seeking equal opportunities for all genders. And it's not always enough to be self-confident in kitchen, in garden, or in university lab. Sometimes we need encouragement to start a business, take on leadership role, and use our strengths. And I look forward to discuss these topics today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Finally, Macht.
Good afternoon, everybody, and also for everybody, very happy International Women's Day. We celebrate 50% of the population today. So as Director of Education, for me, my starting point is actually really the skills and the kind of the roles that are sort of in society and how they're being filled. And I think for me, the starting point is really that there are no male or female kind of jobs or anything, but it is more that individuals really have particular strengths and skills that we want to sort of leverage in really answering those very big questions that we've got in society. And so for me, a really interesting sort of framework that helps with that is the Entrecomp framework that sets out entrepreneurial competency. So the skills to be an effective entrepreneur wherever you find yourself. And thinking about the theme of today, I think I want to pick out 3 of those skills. The first one is creativity. We're only going to solve the society's problems if we're using the creativity of everybody in sort of finding interesting solutions. And this is one where I think it's absolutely essential that we've got the whole spectrum of different creativity possibilities sort of on board to make sure that we get the right solutions. The second point is self-awareness and self-efficacy. So this is one where it really comes in sort of when you understand your own skills, you're going to more believe in that you can actually do something. And so it really is about how do we strengthen the entrepreneurial self-efficacy of individuals that want to work on that systems transformation. Now, the one thing that we know from research at one of our collaborators that we work with intensively, they've done research, and it sort of looks as if there's a tendency for women to kind of be more hesitant about their own skill sets, whereas men seem to, or kind of male sort of traits, seem to be more about overestimating your own capabilities. Now, if that is the case, then you would get sort of, if you're overconfident about your own skills, yeah, you're going to think that, oh, yes, I can do this, or yes, I can do that. And I think we need to have some of that sort of, we need to balance that out with people who've got realistic senses of what are their skills. And so we need to mediate that sort of on both ends. The final skill for me is one about risk and uncertainty and how you manage that. And this is one where, again, with ventures that are mostly male-led, they tend to have a sort of very high risk profile, also from an investment perspective, because there might be higher incidents of risky behavior that are actually going to affect the long-term success of a venture. So this is one where actually having female voices and female perspectives actually helps in having more sort of balanced risk profiles, and something that is then good for the long-term investment strategy. So I'll leave it there, but from a skills perspective, lots of different things to think about.
Definitely lots of different things to think about. Thank you, all of you. Just to let you know, we're getting messages on LinkedIn from viewers who are joining us from Belgium, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, Kenya, Hungary, and Poland. Please do get involved. As always, send in your questions on Slido, or also, scan the QR code that you're seeing right there on your screens on LinkedIn. And don't forget, there is a hashtag for Slido as well, 08 March. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so just to pick up a little bit on what Macht was saying there. You used a phrase, overconfident of skills. I think for 50% of the population who are women, we might be confident of our skills, but 50% of the other population, which is male, seems to be not so confident about our skills. So how do we then use this creativity, as Macht was calling about, of everyone? Now, just to kick off with a little bit more of stats. Now, the UN's Food Agriculture Organization says that the gender gap in agriculture is one of the most significant worldwide, but rarely documented. Those stats that we've all talked about already in introductions, those don't lie. This is a day when we are celebrating, womanhood. But are we going forward or are we going backwards? And I'll put that question first to Maria.
I like to always think that we go forward. That's like, I think maybe a little bit optimistic view as well, every now and then. But I do see that that for me there's like three things that I particularly look at when we think about like women in the agri-food area. There's like indeed like let's say building a support system. I think this is really extremely important, and I think that's where we are certainly getting better. There's much more, let's say even like it's important obviously to have both men and women supporting women to basically dare, as you were talking about this confidence, to dare to take a step towards, for example, entrepreneurship. Then there's also like feeling respected as a let's say business owner, and this is again like something related to that building at the same time those competencies that Martin was mentioning about, but then at the same time, and I think once again there we are getting better, but then also like for women themselves to feel that, look, I created this one. I have been extremely innovative. I have used all my skills and capabilities to come up with an idea like this, and I can go forward. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I can still make a step forward. And I think this is maybe something that there's a continuous work that is needed in this particular area. And then obviously in this access of funding, I'm not sure if we are actually really getting fast enough. So maybe the acceleration here is extremely important, so that, we are just not seeing every year, okay, well, where are we going? But, maybe we should have a rocket acceleration target and say that, we actually really want to reach the stars and get that funding part as well somehow better fixed. And that's where we need to certainly go forward. We're not maybe getting backwards, but certainly not as fast as we should.
Okay, acceleration, and there was a key word you used there, respect. Respect is obviously important for all genders, but Moa, do you think that women have been able to capture respect?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would follow up also on Maria's point that we are moving forward, and women hopefully are seeing more and receiving more respect in the sector. But I would like to also pick up, Miriam, on the point that you were mentioning in the beginning around the data. And we know that gender gaps in agriculture is significant, but rarely documented. But in some cases, they are documented. And that's where we see also actors taking action and being able to accelerate some of the financing that Maria was talking about. So, for example, you said FAO has done a lot of work on this, and if we look at countries like Malawi and Zambia, they've estimated that the gender gap in agriculture productivity is as high as 28%. That if we would close that, you would see an increase in crop production by more than 7%. You would lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty, and you would have increases in the 100 of million ranges in GDP. So once we have that type of data available, you'd see more and more financial intermediaries like banks wanting to do more to close the gender gap. And then starting to engage more and more with women entrepreneurs, seeing what they can deliver, and thereby also, the female entrepreneurs in the sector gaining more respect and showing what they can deliver. What I find interesting, though, is that there is more and more data and information, at least what I'm seeing, on the gender gaps in agriculture and the role of women in the agriculture sector outside of Europe. But that when it comes to inside the European context, there is still quite a lot of data gaps. So we know, of course, that there are some similarities in between, like women managing significantly smaller farms than men, or managing less specialized farms, having higher barriers to access finance, or being less represented in leadership positions. But at least from what I'm seeing, there's less of a movement happening inside of Europe as compared to outside in the agri sector. So it would be really interesting to have a discussion around why that might be.
No, just to follow up, we know how important data is universally now in the world that we're living with. Data can tell us so much. Why is it historically in this sector there just hasn't been the data that you would expect? I know that you talked about that there is perhaps, it's less of a gloomy picture than perhaps I was painting. You say that there is some data out there, but why historically has this sector been so slow to have an uptake of data?
I'm not sure if this sector has been slower than other sectors. I think in general we are seeing, the need for more sex disaggregated and gender analytics across different sectors. My question is more, why has it been slower in the agriculture sector within an EU context as compared to outside of the EU, where you have FAO, you have CGR, some of these big international research organizations that have done a lot of work outside. I don't have the answer why it hasn't been looked at to the same extent in the EU, but maybe some of the other panelists do.
Giedre, I'm going to come to you because I know that you have a food startup. And if Moa doesn't mind me using the example of an EIB report that she co-authored, it had me laugh a little bit. And I'll tell you why, if Moa doesn't mind. It sort of imagines a world where women can affect change. And what I was reading was, to take a quote from it, it said, sidewalks would be wider to make it easier to move around with strollers. More street lights would help keep everyone safe walking at night. Affordable, accessible and secure public transport solutions would likely accommodate shorter trips and ensure last mile connectivity. I mean, when you hear that from this report, it is quite fascinating because if, women were included more in decision making, we would see things a lot more differently in our world. Giedre, so as a kind of business owner, as an owner of a food startup, what do you make of the world that you sort of currently occupy?
So I think it sounds like would be more comfortable for us if women would have more power to make decisions. So, and me myself, I understand that this agri-food sector is historically occupied, dominated by men. But I think that women, we shouldn't seek or reach the same style of work, because sometimes maybe we have other traits and we solve problems in a different way. So we should empower ourselves and we should use our strengths in the same sector. And this diversity then could bring much bigger benefits when collaborating and not competing who should take bigger part or decision making in this sector. So I think
100%. I think that's a really important point to make. And I think that was something that Mart was also talking about, that women have different strengths as well. But Giedre, just to keep talking about your experience. You also participated, I believe, in acceleration programs that were specifically targeting women. What would you say are the main differences in these kind of programs, and how much do they then empower women to be a part of the process and a part of this sector?
Yes, so I have participated in women-oriented accelerator and in other accelerators. So I think in this Empowering Women in Agri-Food program, it was more mentors, more female mentors who could see the sector from their experience and not in general, not to share general knowledge or general experience like chemistry is chemistry, mathematics is mathematics, but taking solutions might be much more creative than separate fields. So I think these general accelerators for women founders and men founders, they are more generalized, and there is no such subtle, I would say subtle knowledge given. Just usual business like business things. So that's why I mentioned that this specialized accelerators, especially for women who are not so brave to start business, it's a lot valuable, much more valuable than usual.
And so how would you say that you run your business? How is it perhaps different?
So this is my first business, so I do not know how I would run the business if the founder would be man. But I myself, I am too much, I think, overthinker. I am careful. So this running of business sometimes needs diversity because I do not take so much risk. So maybe I think about decisions more carefully, and maybe it might take longer time, but the results might be might be sure about the results. So maybe that would be different style of business when a woman is founder.
Wonderful. And Mark, you of course were speaking in your introduction about the creativity. How do we tap into the creativity of women for agri-food sectors?
So I think for me, one of the things that springs to mind, and it connects with some of the earlier points made. We're working very closely with Shima Barakat of the University of Cambridge, and her starting point is change the system, don't change the women. So it really is about, actually, we need to sort of rethink about the systems and how we shape society in order for the kind of women to be able to participate, to bring in their creativity, and for that to be sort of really recognized. And one of the things that for me is something that really gets my hackles up in this is there's this Harvard Business Review study that was conducted where sort of people were put in front of investors with exactly the same pitch. One sort of young men and the other young women, and the investors were coming back with feedback for the men about, okay, well, they are promising kind of people, whereas the women were sort of described as being young, inexperienced, and sort of still a lot to learn kind of thing. And it's that kind of thing that there are a lot of institutional barriers that we need to overcome in some way. And I think this is one sort of getting that creativity in is going to require having some of those institutional barriers coming, sort of that we break them down. But I think it also requires that creativity to actually think about, well, what are those barriers and what are the creative ways to break them down. So I think there's a dual kind of component there to the creativity question. And this is something where I think this is the responsibility of us all. This is not something that is purely a women-led responsibility to change everything. This is something where everybody has this sort of responsibility, and so also an invitation to help rethink how we do things, so that that creativity can come to the fore much more prominently.
So Miro, do you see anything then, just to pick up on what Mart was talking about then, do you see anything that sort of bothers you, any bias against women in this sector? What sort of examples can you perhaps give, or experiences that you sort of observed?
Yeah, I will agree with Martin in one thing. It is that it's not to change the women, but the system. And the one thing that I see that's the most challenging, that we don't have enough women in the programs. So, for example, I can share you one story. This is a story about our program that we had in one small city here in Croatia, and in this program we had the 9 teams in pre-acceleration. 4 of them were women-led, and there was one specific team led by 2 women. They were just students starting the business, And just to spoil the story, they won the competition. And at the end, they won because they invested the most time into discovering about customers, discovering about the problems. And I wouldn't say they were less creative than men, or the men were less creative, but these women invested all their time, all their effort into bringing this business up. So when we have this kind of programs where we have women and men together, I see women more motivated in the program. So I would say that barriers are not in the programs itself, but before those programs. So we need to have the funnel which will bring more women into this kind of the programs. And when women are in the program, they can be equal with all their men counterparts, because they are, and they are even better in those programs than men are, at least from our experience based on all those programs that we were running in Croatia.
Okay, and Maria, we've been talking about, these, sort of female empowering programs. So talk to us a little bit then about, your program, the Empowering Women in Agri-Food program. What is the experience like for women? And perhaps, there will be women watching this who, are involved with the sector. How would you pitch them to get involved with it?
Well, I would definitely say that the EVA, so Empowering Women in Agriculture, is actually one of the really, if I can say it, like absolutely excellent and really encouraging program. And I would only say that maybe one pitching there is good, is that we have even some men who have approached us and asked that could they also take part in this program. So I think this is a good pitching overall, and that would definitely bring things further. But I would just before maybe continuing with the small pitch there is that it's really important indeed that even though men cannot join this program, at least not for the moment, but they do take part in this program. Otherwise, they are mentors, as Mira was mentioning, trainers, and also project implementers. And I think it's really important that, once again, it is not something that women are in their own corner, doing their own thing on their own. But it is really about, yes, the focus has to be in women there, because this is where we need to get acceleration happening. But then we do need the support of both. So also men in this program, to not to say that, okay, these are the experts, but say that, okay, look, we support, we believe in it, as Mira was saying. And in a way also like breaking those barriers to say that, look, this is how far we can go, and this is how far we go together. And I think this is equally important to remember. And this kind of like a special focus for women programs, once again, it's really needed. So I think this is one of the things that I really want to stress out, that we need more programs where we can actually empower women, in whether it is in the funding, whether it is in the entrepreneurship, whether it is in creativity, in innovation. I think it's really, really important. But then once again, let's not do it on our own, in our own corner, but let's do it together.
Indeed. And Mira, I believe that you do work together. I mean, you've been part of this program as well.
Yep. I was so Windstar Croatia was running Empowering Women in Agri-Food program in Croatia. And so at the very beginning, first of all, what we didn't expect was so many applicants. So we had 50 plus applicants from different parts of Croatia. So we were running different programs, and none of those was so popular among particular target groups. So that was the first thing. And then it was hard time to take at just 10 of them in the program. So we were kind of sad because we could support only 10 of them. But during the program, what we have noticed is that the participants themselves, they started to connect. So at the end, we had also friendships being made with all those participants, and I know that some of them even started some projects together. We also didn't want just to have women entrepreneurs as mentors to participants who were women. We wanted to include men, just because I think this gender equity and equality is not just a women's issue, it's a human issue. It concerns all of us. So I would say that the program was full of empathy. None of those programs that we had before was so full of empathy in the program, but at the end, some of those teams were really proved the great progress just because they were matched with the right mentors, and they were very grateful at the end to having this opportunity, and the winning team and the team that took the second place at the very beginning. They were having just one idea what to do, but working with a mentor for 6 months, it totally changed their business, and it made them believe that they can win the game. Even they didn't believe it, but they mentored it, and they listened to him, to her, and at the end they won the game. So it was really a great experience working with 10 women teams. But in the future, I agree what Maria said. I think there should be also more programs which would support both women and men in the same program.
Fantastic. It definitely is a human issue, Miro. And Maria, having these men as mentors, I mean, it is so important because you have to learn, perhaps to say from the best, but from the people that are doing well in this sector, in this industry, isn't it?
Yeah, and the mentoring per se, I think there's also another element in the mentoring that is really important. It's listening, and it's about like understanding what the other party is saying. And this is where, obviously, I'm not saying that all the men are only there to provide answers right away, because there are obviously excellent listeners, and we have been probably really lucky of throughout our program to have really great mentors who have been listening what are the challenges, and therefore trying to build those solutions together. So not like okay, let me provide you a couple of solutions here and then you'll be fine. I think one of the really the most important qualities, human qualities overall, and when we talk about any kind of achievements or learning new skills or going forward, is actually the capability to being able to listen, then also being able to basically encourage to find the solutions. And just maybe one thing, when I mentioned that indeed we should definitely have even more programs, and obviously Eva is one of the programs what EIT Food is, where EIT Food is running specifically looking at the women and in the agri-food sector. But we also have we lead food, or women lead food in a way, WE. So it's a very nice way of putting this one. And there as well, there are really great couple of years of a excellent group of women who take part in this one. So check it out, and obviously apply if this is really something of interest for you. So yeah, great things.
Okay, and Giedre, you also wanted to add in here as well, I believe.
Yes, I can witness the benefits of EVA program, because sometimes, especially young students, girl students, they are not brave to start business. So, and when there is program oriented to women, so you know that it is safe program. Like you can learn. It's okay that you will not know everything, but you have idea, you have your solution, your like. Way how you want to develop this idea, and this EVA program is the first like way to try yourself, and it's very like beneficial, good for young entrepreneurs.
Yeah, brilliant. And Mark, do you also want to talk about these programs?
Yes. So, and this is a good one, Geertruida, that it's sort of starting with Eva. And then, so what we need to think about is more diverse programs where actually people that come that have particular needs that we can actually sort of work on those skills developments but also the network building. And so this is one where actually We Lead Food and Eva both are very strong in building a network that also persists post intervention. So rather than it just being a simple kind of training program and you go on and you live your life, the explicit purpose is to build a strong and resilient network, not necessarily for mentoring, but for championing and for sort of spurring each other on, and to actually being that supportive network of people that believe in kind of what the change agenda is, and to make sure actually that there is the support wherever required. And I think this is then also the link that is coming towards, say, for example, finance. So we've had a couple of people coming through the various programs, either starting up businesses or identifying new possibilities, new collaborators to do exciting new things as a result of these kind of programs, but also to find investors in those. But I think Moa is able to talk a lot more about that in detail.
She is indeed. And Marta, I've got to say, you're talking about, a female network or women to have a network, of all genders. I mean, brilliant. Just thank you for saying that as well. I think all the women out there are saying yes to you right now. It's brilliant. Okay, so Moa, then, we've talked about these programs and networks and all of these kind of things. But let's come to the finance then. Is gender-based support or investment something that member states need to focus on better, especially when we're looking at things like startups to perhaps encourage women? And there's also another stat that I found. It's from Eurostat that says only 4.2% of female farmers are also under 35. So could this, gender-based support also help younger generations get more involved in this sector?
Yeah, no, totally. It could definitely also tackle the youth dimension, and just to link back to the programming. So this type of empowerment programming to prepare women in the sector to be ready and to have good business models is key. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that when that women in the sector also then have access to the financing that's needed. I mean, we know that women-led businesses worldwide, there is a financing gap of 300 billion, that 70% of women-owned and small and medium enterprises have inadequate access to finance and to credit, and that the agriculture sector is not an exception from that. So what do? We try to partner with local banks and with funds, and to set up dedicated credit lines for women entrepreneurs. So just last year in December, we signed a 150 million euro loan with Crédit Agricole in France, where we have agreed that a minimum of a third of that loan will be dedicated to women entrepreneurs and to women-led businesses in the sector. So this credit line focuses primarily on France, but will also have an outreach to other countries across Europe. And we have had similar experiences also outside of Europe for a few years. I mentioned Zambia and Malawi already. We have had a program running there for the last 2-3 years, where we, like the other participants on the call, have focused on building the capacity and building networks and peer-to-peer groups among women within the sectors, but matching that also with dedicated credit lines from the local banks. So we have a partnership with Ecobank Malawi, with First Capital Bank in Malawi, and Sanaco in Zambia, and they are dedicating a proportion of the loans that we provide to them to women entrepreneurs in the sector. And more than that, it's also about looking at what type of finance offer is really catering to women's needs. in the agriculture sector, it might be you have to look at lowering the collateral needs, or tailoring, not only providing the financial service, but also the technical and the peer network. It's really important for women to feel also comfortable enough to take on that financing. Many women are, or what we see, are hesitant to take up credit. They want to retain the control. They are not so sure how the loan conditions will work for them. So it's also important for banks and financial institutions to understand the women's market and what are their needs, and to create financial products also that caters to that.
And Moa, is that information on that financial support for women readily available? Where can they go to find it?
Sure. So in general, we publish all of our investments and kind of key information around it on our websites. But then, of course, it is with our partner banks. So one would have to then, get information and get access from the partner banks that we work with. So in France, this loan have just been signed, but for example in Malawi and Zambia, where we have been working for a little bit longer in the agri space with a women's lens, we have also made extra efforts to make sure that there is outreach. So last year we organized about 4 women in business pitch night with a focus on the agri sector, to both promote the credit line, to raise awareness that it is there, but also for women businesses to come there and pitch and get having a direct conversation with the banks that we are cooperating with. So there are different ways to market and to make sure that the information gets out there as well.
And so that network that women need to be a part of is also hugely important to what you're saying. Okay, we're going to break away just to see some of the questions that the audience have for all of you panelists. Mart, I'm going to come to you first. Clive asks, is the issue really down to how the education system works?
That's an interesting one. Part and part. I think no educator would agree that this is built into the system. Every educator is going to want to create equal opportunities for boys and girls, men and women, all alike. I think there is something, though, that still with societal role expectations that is playing quite a big role. So there are boys' roles and there are girl roles. I think that's one part of it, and I think it is also something with if you look at, for example, STEM subjects, where girls who like maths might actually be looked at in a strange way, or if they're not good at maths, then that's fine because they're a girl, and that I think is more of so. There are some of those structural problems, but then other than that, I think it is more about actually to what extent do we give people the freedom to develop in their own directions? To what extent do we have those societal expectations still about what is happening, what's happening to career development, particularly around young women that are coming into their career path and looking at career progression. So I don't think it is necessarily down to the education system, but what I would say is that actually the education system can play a major role in overcoming some of these challenges. And I think that is more kind of the question that for me is an interesting one, is how do we turn sort of the skill development that is going on anyway, how do we turn that in a way to also challenge some of those more systemic kind of aspects of how society at the moment unfortunately still operates?
Well, let me sort of add in on Clive, the viewer's question then, Mart. If we are talking about education, and you said it quite brilliantly there about, freedom of the right of people to be able to choose what to learn or what they want to go into. Do you think perhaps also in rural communities, their curriculums, what they teach, the trainings that they give, they need to be more focused towards those communities that obviously have a massive input in this sector?
So the rural dimension certainly comes into play into this, and it is one of those things where indeed you also have to look at, well, where are job opportunities? What do those job opportunities look like? So there is a segment of the food system where women do a lot of trading in small businesses that are sort of catering to a very specific need in terms of particular kind of services. But generally, often these get combined with childcare, or they need to be fitted around childcare because the infrastructure just isn't there, or that in a way the local or the kind of the rural economy is just not supporting other types of venturing. And I think that is one where again we need to have that sort of a sharp focus on that to really understand where do we have sort of skill possibilities, where do we have skill gaps in the future, and how are we going to fit that in. So one key statistic, if you look at the sort of vets, so veterinary doctors going around, the vast majority is actually close to retirement age and is not able to service big areas anymore. So, but that might be difficult to combine running a vet practice with if you also need to do kind of the household and everything around it. So we need to then have more of a conversation about, well, how do we think about part-time work? How do we think about actually being able to respond to particular kind of needs that are happening in rural areas and sort of address those there. I think this is a bit of a woolly answer. I'm listening to myself, but I think there is a role here for all actors to come together. This is something that a policy needs to get involved, training agencies need to get involved, women themselves, but also the ecosystems, finance needs to get involved to see how do we rebuild rural infrastructures to address those needs.
Okay. Moa, I think this next question should be for you. It's from Carmen from the Investment Bank. Might the panelists have any information on whether women are more likely to contribute and support more sustainable agriculture practices when compared to men? Do you have any data on that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, broadly, we know that women tend to start up more sustainable businesses, women entrepreneurs. We can see, for example, companies with gender diverse boards are also much more likely than those without greater gender diversity to reduce the intensity of energy consumption, of greenhouse gas emissions, but also of water use, which is also very important in the agriculture sector. I mean, there's now more and more data on women-led firms achieving higher environmental, social, and governance scores across different type of metrics, and also, for example, that banks run by women tend to lend less to big polluters. If we look in the broader kind of forestry space as well, you have a lot of information and data on both the gender angle, but also broader aspects of social inclusion. So if you look at indigenous populations and their contribution to managing forests and agricultural land more sustainably. So surely there is a link also between, you know, sustainable agriculture and more diversity in the sector.
Okay, Maria, a question for you then. There's a 2022 New European Innovation Agenda. You know, we have these, I mean, obviously there are many policies. The EU also have a rural action plan. You know, there's lots of policy that says it supports, you know, women in this sector. But do you think, you know, the kind of legislation that is out there is a good enough blueprint for the future as well?
You know, in when we talk about like policies, you know, that often they come after there's a movement. So often movements are first and then the policies come after. So we should not confuse that it is vice versa. It isn't. So, but nevertheless, policies are extremely important because they basically then build the framework, as we know, in for example, even in innovation agenda to go further, and also like let's say put the point where it's really needed to say that okay, the focus needs to be here. And it needs to be these barriers that we need to live together, and we have to see then what is on the other side of these barriers, or if we lift them, then indeed the society will be much more inclusive. It's also going to benefit us not only socially but also economically. And so this is where these policies are extremely important. But it is not to see that these policies are going to make it. They basically make a space in these areas, but often the movements are there to actually make it really happen. And one of the things I just want to add here on this idea that, how the society and, we need to kind of have an absolutely complete different way of looking at the things. I think it is Commissioner Gabriel who's initiating this kind of a startup village initiative, where basically the idea is that, could we see also like rural areas as the source of entrepreneurs and startups, and could there also like be something that is needed, even though we are not in the urban area, but so we see it really from the different angle with the different lenses. And innovation agenda indeed is there to pave the way, if I may say it like this, and it should be seen as something of a framework. It's a defined, desired state where we should be heading at, and I think that we all need to make sure that we lift those barriers so that we can achieve these things.
And Miro, your thoughts on whether EU policy is doing enough, but specifically, does it do enough to encourage all genders to move towards entrepreneurship, to be innovative? What have you found? What's your experience of that?
Yeah, I would say that there are good steps made, and especially if those policies are going to be followed by actions. In actions, I also mean actions in financing. So if we will allow more finances for women-led startups, for programs that are especially for women, I think then we are able to lower the barrier for women to enter into the business. And when this barrier is lower, we'll have more women going into business. And at the end, I don't think there is a problem that women are not successful in entrepreneurship, but that we don't have enough women trying to go into this business. And I believe this is just because of this barrier. It takes more time, at least from my experiences. We have run many different programs in Croatia, and when women decide to go into the program, they really made this decision and they are all into the program. But it took them longer to decide to apply for the program than it would take men. So I think with all those policies followed by action, and in action I also mean following by financing instruments that could support women, that would lower the entry barrier for women into entrepreneurship. And then I think this could lead to potentially having more women entrepreneurs, and then we have diversity and diversity in this area.
And there definitely are, so many tools available, so many opportunities for diversity that you talk about, for equity in this sector. But Moa, let me come to you on this one. We're living in a world where, life is really hard for everyone. There's economic downturn. And we know that during these economic downturns, women are actually hit harder than men. I think the food security gender gap grew bigger in the COVID-19 pandemic. Also in the COVID-19 pandemic, more women found themselves out of work than men. Is society just set up for women to be disadvantaged?
And I think it's really true what we saw during COVID, right? And it links back to also some of the points that Martin was making around care. So during COVID, we saw, childcare facilities getting closed down, elderly care facilities being, maybe more limited. So just the unpaid care work of women were increasing, and we saw women being harder hit by the whole pandemic. We saw that the gap in job rates between women and men really increased after COVID. Women had a 15% job gap as compared to men, 10.5% unemployment rate in the EU, for example. So there's a lot of those structural challenges that is really deep rooted, and it's rooted in the gender norms and the power relations that still exist, and that really requires this more systematic shift and different type of partners to tackle it. So financing is of course one part of it, and education is one part of it, but then also making sure that we have some of these infrastructures in place. So investing more also in the care economy, seeing how we can invest more in rural areas as well, to try to bridge some of those gaps and kind of reset the balance and build back better, so that the starting position is not at a disadvantaged stage.
Bringing up working mums or women with children is a really important point, because, once women obviously get to the table, if they do decide to start a family, we all know, whether it's, agri-food or any sector, things just, working life gets a little bit harder. There's lots more to do. And obviously childcare itself is hugely expensive. So Maria, what provisions can be made in this sector to encourage women to get back to work after they've decided to start a family as well?
Was that for me? Yeah, the question?
That was for you, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think that obviously, I mean, as Mo was really putting it so well, I mean, there's obviously a lot of things that are still in the way how we basically see it, and the society and the les mœurs, as we say in French, the habits and attitudes and behavior obviously is sometimes really complicated to change. But I do see though that women do need to get back into work, and they need to be encouraged. And obviously, I mean, the society and governments has a very strong role in making sure that the support is there, so that they actually really can go back and do things what is really needed. So I'm looking at in that direction over there, because without that support, it is really complicated though to make it happen.
Indeed. And Mark, I'll come to you for this, but perhaps Maria might want to add in as well. There's a question from Helen, and she says, is there a plan for expansion of this scheme to more countries in Africa, as women as the spearheads in rural farming and food development? Perhaps that is a question for Maria, or I don't know. I'll leave it to you guys to decide who wants to pitch in there, or perhaps both of you, Macht.
Oh, I am smiling. I love the idea, and I would love to explore how we can actually do this, because I think, for us, of course, as EAT Food, our starting point is in Europe, but the challenges that we're talking about are absolutely global. And food security is an absolute. With climate change hitting more and more, it is going to be more of an issue all the way through. So, and it's truly a global phenomenon. And if we don't solve it for the whole of the world, I think that would challenge us very badly on the equity and principle in the first place. But the other thing is that actually it really is part of our human responsibility to think this through. So I would love to have that conversation. So if you after the session you want to find me on LinkedIn and connect, I'd be very happy to see how we could collaborate. What might be the possibilities to trial this in Africa, but also other parts of the world, to see how we can enhance that impact with the learnings that we've got.
Wonderful. And I hope that everyone has noted that as well. Okay, so Miro and Giedre, I'm going to ask this question to both of you. Miro, you can go first. And it's about a question from Louise, and he talks about personalities. He says, in terms of equity, I see sometimes the tendency of bringing people or women to the type A personality, achievement-oriented, competitive, fast-paced. Is this in line with improving equity, or do we need to make room in power positions for other personalities? I mean, what I would also add to Louise is the whole point of days where we are, talking about equity and highlighting women, is that this is about all women, all personalities. Isn't that true, Miro?
Yeah, I would agree with you. We have seen different personalities coming to events. So as Luis explained, that the type A personalities, so high achievers, the ones that are very competitive, but also we have seen people for and especially women who are very shy, very introverts, and then when they had a stage, had the right support, they blossom. So they were one of the best participants, and at the end they were successful in entrepreneurship because they got right tools which focus them on the right things in business, and that's a focus on a customer. So how to create a value for your customers, so you can get value back from the market. And I don't think it depends about type of the person. Those that are type A, so more how to say, more publicly active and eloquent, so they get more attention, but it doesn't mean that they are able to create more value for the final customer. And I think in business, this is the most important thing, that we solve real world problems and then create value out of solving those problems for the business. So yeah, that's my answer in short.
Indeed. And Giedre, this is really about, I hear what the viewer's question is, but this is really about an inclusive environment. Women are different.
Yes, I totally agree with Miro and with the person who is asking that we shouldn't go to compete with the type A personality. We should collaborate, and if like men are more like competitive or aggressive, or they are taking risks, and if some women might be like not the A type, and it doesn't matter that they cannot be perfect startup founders. So I think we should collaborate, and this diversity with strong person and not strong person, so it should work. So I think we are going to this direction.
Exactly. And the whole thing is, women like to collaborate. We don't necessarily like to compete. So please do keep that in mind as well. Okay, so we are running out of time, panelists. I'm going to ask you to give your final comments or thoughts, but also framed within this question as to what you see the future of this sector, the agri-food sector. Can you see it one day being far more inclusive than it is currently? Maria?
Yes, I do. First of all, I see agri-food sector as a whole having much more of attention. I mean, obviously due to this really unfortunate crisis, whether it is COVID or war in Ukraine. And, at the same time, I think that agri-food area per se is really probably let's say, having more of a notion that food is actually really important. And therefore, as well, I think that it goes back to those who are actually there working in this field. And obviously, there is actually a lot of women already in this area. And I would think that we will need to transform, and this is why EAT Food also exists, is that we are transforming the agri-food system together. And so this is also where we see that through this, the transformation will require innovation from everybody, and particularly also of women. And I am really sure that through those kind of like multiple lenses, multiple ways of looking at these issues, we will find solutions that is going to not only make the situation of women in agri-food sector better, but actually the whole agri-food sector much better for the future and future-proof for people and for the environment. This is how I see it.
Indeed. And Moa, how do you see it?
Yeah, no, I'm also optimistic. From where I sit, I see a lot more interest among financial institutions to invest with a women lens, a greater understanding why it makes sense to back women entrepreneurs, and especially in the agriculture space. We are definitely doubling down on our investments and support through banks and funds to be more dedicated towards women entrepreneurs, more broadly, but also in the agriculture sector. And I think every year we see more and more of these type of dedicated credit line in support of women in the sector. So that's a great starting point. I think we are also seeing much more focus on the quality jobs aspect, which is also an important part for the sector. So not only around, what are the opportunities to retain and promote women in agribusinesses, but also how to recruit better. So that could be anything from what we have been talking about today, providing childcare facilities as part of your employment offer. And we see more of these creative solutions to also create better quality job opportunities for women in the sector.
Indeed. And Miro, your thoughts on the sector then and the future of it?
I have to join everyone else and say that I'm also very optimistic, just because I see that there are more and more opportunities, especially for the women in the rural areas in Croatia. Croatia just, I would say, recently joined the European Union, and things are going much better here. Why am I optimistic also is because I believe that if we give more opportunities for especially women to start their businesses, then if there are more opportunities, then we'll have more women starting businesses. And if we take a look at the data, and we see the data shows that women are more successful in the business. So I believe we can create more successful business environment in the future, and especially in the countries like Croatia, which are still developing. I think this is going to go in the right direction.
Indeed. And Getra, your thoughts?
I think that it's great that we are willing to see more women in agri-food sector, and I wish only good luck to all women who will work in the future in this sector.
Thank you so much. And then final words to Mart.
So yes, so for me as well, but I would like to actually turn this around and actually we can accelerate this, and we can all accelerate this. And this is where actually I would like to extend a challenge to all of the men that are listening. Step back and listen, and really listen to what the needs are. Don't assume that you know what answers might be, but ask. And I think that if we all sort of did that as our 3 steps, then I think a huge amount can change very rapidly.
Thank you all so much. And panelists as well, and all of our viewers, as you can see, I have my female colleagues joining me here. What we'd like to say is that also this moderation, this event has been brought to you by an almost exclusively Euractiv team, but also from the EIT Food team. They are also almost exclusively women. We would also like to thank all of our male allies at Euractiv. We have 3, and obviously you can see EIT does have its allies as well. So to everyone who has been watching today, we really hope that you have enjoyed this discussion that has been brought to you by EIT Food in collaboration with Euractiv. Take care and happy International Women's Day. Did you like it?